Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session. My name is Ryan Sullivan. I am Marketing Coordinator for Tikit North America. And today we have Peter Zver, Director of Tikit Americas, conducting a webinar on timekeeping, value at the intersection of timekeeping's role in strategic decision-making. This session will be about 40 minutes to an hour. And just ask that if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A section of your platform or into the chat dialogue, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. Without further ado, we'll hand it over to Peter.
Great. Thank you, Ryan, and thanks everyone for joining this morning. As the title suggests, value at the intersection of time. What we're looking at today is, we all know timekeeping is a tried and true process in law firms. We're looking here at, can we derive extra value at this intersection? So really, some of the unique characteristics why there's an opportunity or a potential opportunity is that timekeeping is obviously a mandatory process in law firms. It's been there since the 60s for what really a one-dimensional purpose, which was, i.e., record time, get it on a bill, get paid, and move on. It's also gaining more strategic attention in the last 4 or 5 years in terms of its costing role. Capture as much time, record the work, understand the cost so you can price better. So there is more focus. There's more diligence against this process in the last 5 to 10 years. So it's really going in from a one dimension to a two-dimensional objective here. It sits at the start of a transaction cycle. What we mean by that, it's right at the beginning. You do the work, you record it, and then there's there's other processes downstream before the client sees the work product, the price of the work product, and obviously the payment of the work product. So there's a long runway of opportunity, I say. If you get it right, there's a snowball effect in terms of the value that the firm can derive. Timekeeping is very matter-centric as well. By default, you're capturing time against the matter, so there is matter centricity there. You're in the moment, you're against the matter. What else can happen? And with all the systems, especially the modern systems, there's opportunity for extended reach. So the timekeeping system today travels with the attorneys and timekeepers. So there is a touch point or an end point that's being extended out. And that's an opportunity in itself. So this process can be exploited. Like I said, it was one-dimensional, it's now two-dimensional. And what we're looking at is multi-dimensional down the road. As far as baseline value, this is really out of the box. You should be deriving this now, i.e. good usability, good accessibility, a compliance element, possibly, which is new, and we'll talk about that as an opportunity in a second. The goal here is good time data, and that time data can then be further leveraged into good analytics, good pricing, good costing, more credibility in the invoicing, leading to better realization, and a better law firm client relationship at the end. So this is baseline value. You got to take this box, get this, and it's really value in this historical data. This data historical data can be projected into the future for value. But if we go further, we're looking for the extended value layer. And I always say, timing is everything. Exploit the moment. Obviously, the surfer here on the right, you could be a great surfer, but if you can't catch a wave, you can't, there's no value. I mean, you're not gaining you can't demonstrate your capabilities, enjoy the ride, none of it if you can't catch the wave. And so timing is everything. And what we're saying here is we want to take advantage of the moment of entry. It's a process-driven opportunity we're talking about here. And we want to capitalize on predictable user traffic. We know we have an audience every day. We know there's matter centricity, meaning you're at a moment, you're connected to a matter, you're putting in time for a matter. So there is that point that can be exploited. And it's a single road of travel. Everybody travels this road every single day and stops. So the whole idea, we want to seize that moment and, for lack of a better word, hijack the process for what we call that extended value. So opportunity one, which is happening, but it's happening a lot at the billing stage. We're talking now to bring this to the time entry stage. Awareness, acknowledgement, internal, external, in terms of compliance. So besides getting the revenue in or the work in progress in, we want to make users aware of information that is client matter related. Obviously to the right audience, because the audience is connected to the matter. They're working on the matter. They're connected to that file. Should they be made aware of certain things in terms of do's and don'ts, policy, preferences, latest information from the billing department, whatever. So there's that opportunity, which we call awareness. And there's also acknowledgement. Firms, because of strict compliance, want their user base to acknowledge that they've read some of that information, they've signed off on it. And this is part of good information governance in a firm, knowing that information is being disseminated, being read, and there's evidence of that. So there's two areas there, awareness and acknowledgement. In our example, we're looking at a screen here. This happens to be one of our time entry screens, and we have information bubbles that can just appear at any level for awareness. So that awareness can be billing guidelines, policies, do's and don'ts, news, whatever that can surface at this intersection. Okay. Other things, we could obviously have the warnings, validations, budget checks. These value layers are all happening, seamlessly as an individual is going through the capture process. Okay, so that extra layer, obviously this could be extreme, popping up of many things, and it's all could be timed. It could be event driven. If close to budget, make sure the user's aware. If typing something wrong, make sure they're aware. If there's a policy change, make sure there's a bubble that appears. So don't assume this is going to be delivered in high volume. It'll be delivered at the right time, at the right moment, but part of the process of going through the timekeeping entry process. Acknowledgement could be the same thing. We could now have users acknowledge having read or delivered on certain elements. Again, that data can be captured, all part of the information governance model that the firm is deploying. So again, awareness and acknowledgement as part of compliance, and that data in there can be just about anything. So what is the mechanism? How do you just take a screen and make it alive with information at the right time, at the right moment? Well, there's got to be flexibility in where to connect. The interface has to be designed such that there's receptors in terms of the information. There's receptors and lookups, any events, save buttons, submit buttons. They should be all sort of hot wired to accept an event and an action and a response, so that there's flexibility to exploit this moment. There's flexibility in the type of interaction. Once you interact, is it warnings? Is it hard? Do we lock time? How severe do we want to get? So the type of interaction could be, very, just a warning or just information, optional, or it could be we need a sign off, we need acknowledgement, we need validation before you could enter time against this file that you've read the billing policy. Could go to that level. Flexibility in the what. So it's not just about harnessing information and bringing it to life in this interface. And that information is a sole source of timekeeping. That information can come from anywhere in the organization and even outside the organization in terms of delivery. So the what can be anything. So access to external systems and external data sources, and obviously the ability to attach business logic and validation to the nth degree to make sure that the proper checks and balances can be executed on and deliver then the right, the type of warnings or locking mechanisms that are required. So that there's got to be flexibility in that. There's got to be extensibility in the tech stack. Obviously at Ilta On, we're talking about this. There are no more siloed systems. Yes, they were, the legacy ones have been. The modern system is not a siloed system. There's a API, a rich API that should surround it. There's got to be open connection points, meaning the doors have been engineered in the UI to attach. Like I said, the events like save, submit, and other areas can be exploited to attach and a process or another process besides simply timekeeping. So those open connection points have to be preconceived in the application or the tech stack. The ability to connect other technologies or other platforms like the Microsoft's Power Platform or cognitive services. As long as we can launch events, we can apply these technologies and leverage these technologies, we being, the software provider or the law firm. So in the end, the technology has to be developed knowing there's going to be a hijack. So it's developed for hijack as opposed to developed to be self-sustained or siloed. So that is key. So this is the mechanism, and that it should be prevalent throughout the technology, looking for value points, exploiting them, and deliver that value. Another example is workload, and we put this into our system, and we're continuing to refine it. Before we go into the connection point to the technology, we've got to look at the problem. The problem basically is, we get new business, we bid on new business, we got to look at the scope of the new business. We've tried to find, do we have the expertise? We got to look at timelines. And often at times we go back into historical time data, i.e. slide number 1. There is value there. We can deliver and say, hey, this project or matter will cost this, and we predict it based on a historical price, because obviously we're looking at a historical data. But then we want to apply timeline. Can we get this done in the client's timeline? And that requires, X amount of expertise from our corporate department, our tax department, or whatever, our labor department, whatever it may be, and different areas of expertise, different locations. Do we have those resources? And often at times, we don't know because that data source in terms of future availability is not present in most firms, okay? So if we don't have that data, how do we resource the project and how do we price it competitively? So we might have to take a guess. We might have to go based on only historical data and maybe resource it ad hoc once we get the business. So we are missing an element here of who's available to take on work and at what price, so that we could bid aggressively and competitively. So the workload state today, obviously the forecasting data needs to be created. It does not exist in most firms. We're chasing experts, practice group leaders, who's available, when are we getting off certain files. We're recording stuff to spreadsheets. We're emailing things around and phone calls so that we could, resource a potential matter properly and then price it properly. So high overhead in finding out, what's our availability over the next 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, whatever that may be. There are firms that have voluntary check-in processes, i.e., what we call notional registration, meaning, yes, I'm available. It's very binary. I'm available. I'm, a medium availability, high availability, low availability. So it's a little bit more than binary, but not much more, maybe 3 levels. And push comes to shove, we price and commit to the matter with a clear idea of what resources will be available to service this client, and that leads to reputation, service quality, everything else. Everybody can take on the business, but the question: can you deliver it on time and on budget? So we have a data problem. Okay, there is data missing, and the goal is to get input from researchers on future availability. How do we fabricate that data? How do we build it? And as most of you know, it's a mountain to climb usually. If you look at CRM data, it's always been a challenge getting input. So we got to find the point of least resistance. And the reason we're connecting it here is we feel that timekeeping, there is the point of least resistance in collecting this data, especially with the technologies that are available today. I already alluded to, the notional light, medium, heavy that is going on in a lot of firms. However, it's not attached to a matter. There's no timeline. It's really in the moment. And like I said, a little bit more than binary, maybe 3 levels, and off we go. In terms of objective, if we have an objective measure, it connects to matters. I know that this individual is working on these matters for this period of time and will be available after 3 weeks to take on work. That's what we're looking for, because we want the what, how much, how long. So a statement like working on the Jones file for 50% of my time for the next 3 weeks is multidimensional. It's got more components as opposed to what we call notional, which just says I'm available or I'm not available. The latter gives us the opportunity to plan resourcing. The former is really much more, the now and the present, and not much in terms of, what does the future look like in terms of workload. So before we go further, the challenge question here is: what's the difference between posting an entry for work done and the work that are planning on doing, a sort of a forecast? What is that difference? And the answer is quite obvious. It's just the date. So the properties of time, or work being recorded in the past and work being recorded in the future, there's only one element that changes, is the date. Everything else is the same. Hence why there's opportunity to exploit timekeeping for this opportunity. So timekeeping is used by attorneys every day. We already record hours. It's just a different type of hours, and we could leverage the whole framework. So the UI, the database, all capture endpoints, the extension of the UI, all that is leverageable because everything is the same except for the past versus the future. That's all that's different. So everything else is leverageable. So you can see here, the interface is a simple interface here for Tuesday, August 25th, where we add time. If we move to the next day, we add forecast, because tomorrow is a prediction. It's not historical, and the button changes, the UI stays the same. There's no learning curve. It's just a different status of time. Likewise, we're exploiting our week view because we could put in forecast for 5 days in a row, multiple days. We could copy a whole week into the next week. So all the features, functionality that are available with historical time are available for future time. Hence, the idea of leverage, the UI. Again, zero training. If the audience is used to entering past time, they could enter future time as well. Leverage some of our intelligence and mobility, again, for data enrichment. So yes, that's what we looked at in the past, is what we call traditional entry. But if we look at some of our intelligence that we're doing in the historical time, which I believe you can see here, this is time entry right here on the left, where I'm just typing in natural language telling what I did in the past. Very, very simple. It's part of the timekeeping framework. It's one of our capture mechanisms. So as you can see, every line is going to be propagated forward into the time entry. So it's all natural language, and you can see someone can type or dictate into this dialogue, and time is entered. This is time entry, okay? So this is forecast entry, on the right. So as you can see, it's same UI, same experience. I'm having a conversation into the future, as opposed to a conversation into the past. So both are harnessing data. One is for purposes of revenue. The other one is for purposes of pricing and resourcing. But again, same process. This one is actually adding and propagating vacation. With those two sentences, I've created maybe 20, 25 entries, all into the forecast database, and that can be exploited for reporting. Okay, so again, leverage. Here we're leveraging the intelligence mobility that's already available. Zero training. Also, API, cognitive services, data enrichment. Again, because it's there's an API and there is what we call open endpoints. Every button can be hijacked. You can have a chat bot coming in asking, "Hey, I notice you're still working on this file. Are you ending? I got 1 week left to go, 50% of my time, whatever." And you can answer with natural language in terms of what the state is against a certain matter as you're in the space at the moment, seizing the opportunity. Again, the chatbot can be connected or it can be disconnected from the UI, doesn't matter. But in this case, it's seizing the opportunity. And this you could do with some of the cognitive services and the Q&A services that are available with Microsoft, as long as in Azure. Again, that feeds the data source. Remember, we had a data problem. So, we're using mechanisms, we're using the tech stack to make sure that we get an engagement with the user, i.e. to fulfill the gap, which is a data gap. Once data in any process, once data creation, it needs monitoring. So we gotta know who's participating. What does our data set look like? Is it reliable for query? And that's important. So we're building this data set. We got engagement levels. We got sustainable processes that are trying to drive engagement. And we could see from a dashboard, who's putting it in? What's the latest forecast? Are we up to date? Are we nudging users to get forecast data in using the mechanisms I've described? So the first thing before data creation, you need monitoring to see the quality of that data. You don't want to rely on a data set that is suspect. Once there's data success, okay, once there's data success, then you can now query on who's available, in what timelines, with what expertise levels, what rate structures, which locations, whatever the slice and dice may be, which is totally flexible. Knowing then you have a data source that can be queried against and used competitively in pricing and resourcing effectively. So, nearing the end here, summaries and takeaways. Timekeeping process can be leveraged for extra value add, i.e. that intersection I think is quite valuable. It's just a question of what do we want to build on each corner. We provided two examples. Both are very strategic. One is for compliance, internal, external, leads to better relationships, better quality time, etc. And the other one is forecasting, creating the extra data source. That's the other example we provided here. Before all this happens, the tech needs to be extensible, meaning API, cloud responsive, anytime, anywhere. All that needs to be in place. All the hooks have to be there so that the system designed to i.e., for lack of a better word, be hijacked. And we showed two examples. It's up to the firms. You could think of many, many more that can be connected to this intersection for value. That brings us to the end. And if we have any questions, I know there's been some activity in the chat, but any questions that you may want to ask, this is the moment. Okay.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Peter. Got nothing coming in on the wire at the moment. So with that, we will wrap things up and thank all of our attendees for joining. We will follow up with the webinar recording in the next day or two. And again, thank you for your time, and we wish you a happy and healthy rest of your Ilton and rest of the year as well. So thank you, and take care.